why should I follow your instructions? Like, can you grow this because I live in this part of the world and you're in Australia? And I tell people not to worry about that. I would encourage people not to necessarily just follow people in your own location, which is interesting and good to know what people are growing and planting. But get outside that box a bit and start talking and following people growing in other locations as well, because you never know what ideas might come up that could help you think outside the box.
Welcome back to the Beet Podcast. Today we have a very special guest from down under, Mark Valencia from Self-Sufficient Me, the king of gardening in Australia and also of dad jokes as far as I'm concerned. I've been watching your content for a very long time. I've always loved your attitude and your perspective on the garden, and I'm very excited to talk to you today. So I guess maybe give a little bit more background for anyone who might not know who you are and where you're gardening and sort of your gardening background and style and all that kind of fun stuff.
Thanks, Jacques. It's great to be here. It's a real pleasure to be on the Beet, the epic gardening podcast. I mean, you know, if I can call it that. So I can see that it's growing day by day, and it's just a really good initiative. I wish I had the time to set a podcast up myself, but I am so busy. But I started YouTube 14 years ago. Can you believe it?
It's a serious run.
I got a message from YouTube 2 days ago saying congratulations on your 14th year anniversary. And like, I felt old back then because I did. I left the army after 21 years of service, became a home dad, got stuck into the garden to try to grow more food because we dropped down on the one income and all that type of stuff. But then back then I thought, God, I'm an old fella. And then I looked after the kids for 5 or 6 years, pretty much trying to develop anything I could on YouTube once I joined YouTube in 2011. And so I left the army in 2008. And now to get a message saying that I've been on YouTube for nearly 15 years, toiling and doing my best. I mean, I am pushing 60, so I guess, I am old. But it's been a good journey, mate. Yeah.
But lots of experience along the way. I mean, it's impressive that you've had that going for such a long time. And you could clearly tell that you still enjoy it and that you're having a fun time out there in the garden and getting that harvest. And I mean, when you're gardening, it's easier to be in a good mood as a gardener, I think, than most other things that we could be doing with our time.
Well, they've just brought out a study here in Australia about gardening, but more so eating vegetables, about how good it is for your mental health. So something weird about it is women need to eat more veggies or more servings of veggies a day than men do to get the benefits. So don't quote me on this, but I think men need to eat 3 or 4 servings a day to get the mental health benefits, and women need to eat about 5 to get the same mental health benefits.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So that's an interesting contrast. But the thing that I've always talked about, or what really inspired me to get on YouTube and start showing stuff, was when I left the army, I've got injuries and I lost part of my arm and pieces off me during my service. And we won't go into that. It's an old story and people are probably bored of it. But I did suffer quite a bit of mental health. I wouldn't say big problems. I just tried to deal with them like everyone else does in their life. You don't have to be serving in the military to have mental health issues or have problems, But when I started gardening, I was doing that for a purpose, to save money. That was the main thing, because we dropped down to that one wage. But that side effect of helping me mentally was something that I didn't expect. And the more I got out in the garden, the better it helped me. And I correlated that with getting outside, getting vitamin D, having the joys of gardening. As you know, it's weird. You feel zenned out when you're in the garden. But now I'm thinking it's not just that. Maybe it's also the eating of the veggies, that is also combined with getting outside and gardening that gives you that effect of helps with mental health. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm 100% in agreement with you there, because for me, when I look at it, yes, spending time outside, of course, is going to be good, especially getting the sun, the vitamin D and all that, the fresh air. But I am 100% with you on this idea of also the produce that we're getting is also having a fantastic benefit on us. Now, of course, it's cool to hear that there was a study that actually was able to demonstrate this, because it's something that I feel like I believe. Like there's some things in the world that you feel like you need a study, right, to say like, is this actually true? And there's other things in the world that where I'm like, I know this is true. And it's great that somebody actually looked into it, backed it up with some sort of empirical research. But yes, like, of course, like you read about the way that, especially like mass scale farming, like monoculture goes. Now, of course, when we get into that topic, I will say, like, I think that there's some balance of everything in the world. And to feed as many people as we have, you need some sort of probably big system like that. But you hear about it and you read about it, and the soils are being depleted, the mineral resources are going down. And you know that the produce that's grown on those mass fields that are, chopped through every single year on a rapid basis, they're going to have less nutrition than something grown slowly in your backyard in soil that isn't like stripped and processed and worked in such an intense way for decades at a time. I just think that you're always going to get more nutrition out of that vegetable or fruit, whatever it is you're growing in your garden. And that has to be beneficial to us on the physical level, the mental level, and of course, just the knowing, like, I think there's also that mental benefit of knowing that you produced this food, you grew it in your garden, it was your work, it was your rearing of it that brought it to the table. So I'm right there with you. I think
good points.
A huge thing. And for me, like, I also started the garden kind of to save a little bit of money, but also to kind of force myself to be outside more. And I also saw massive benefits from doing so. I lost a lot of weight. I was more active. I slept better, felt better. And yes, I think part of it was the physical work behind it, but I agree. I think that the produce that you get is just going to be so good. And it also just feels good. Like, just like any project you complete, like if you're like, I got into carving spoons and stuff. And when I finish that spoon, it feels great because it's like you have this sense of accomplishment. And every time you harvest, it's like a little sense of accomplishment. And I think that always is going to be a benefit to us for sure.
Yeah, you bet. Carving spoons, I do recall seeing that. You put it on one of your videos, didn't you?
Yeah. I have one of my little ones just out of reach here. It's something I want to do more of for sure. But it's one of these things where it's like these repetitive meditative thing, like actions are just so good for you. And I think the garden definitely gives you some of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yesterday, I was doing some potting up some fruit trees into bigger containers. Actually, I was using an Epic Gardening grow bag. So I was going from
cool.
I was going from a normal black pot, and which I purchased the fruit tree from, and then I was potting it up into a smaller grow bag. I was bending over stupidly, and all I was doing was getting the potting mix out of the bag and putting it into the grow bag, and it wasn't heavy, nothing, and suddenly my lower back just spasmed up. And now I'm on painkillers, and this is what happens when you get old, people.
I'll say that I'm getting older too, because for me,
mate, you don't.
The one times I know, but the one time that does get me is when I try to do. Generally, it is something heavy that I shouldn't be doing, but anytime you bend over and twist, that kind of action, that's gotten me a few times in the garden for sure, and it's like a little spasm in the back here. I'm like, oh. So never twist when you're picking up stuff in the garden, guys. That's an important one. Yeah. And actually, it brings up something interesting that you were mentioning, is that you are going in containers like these grow bags or pots, but you also primarily, as you mentioned, have been growing in raised beds. Have you ever done did you initially start with raised beds in mind for like having them up off the ground? Did you start in ground? I'm kind of curious on your evolution there. No. I started in ground as cheap as possible. Okay. Yes, of course. That's how I started.
just furrows, like a farmer does. Because I had not a lot of an idea, and I just thought, let's copy what farmers do. And I thought, well, I haven't got a lot of money, so let's just dig the back lawn up. And I did that by hand. And then I evolved into buying a cheap, no-brand tiller on eBay. And I got one of them, and it was a beast of a thing. And that helped a bit more to, stop the digging part as much. But then I just could not. I mean, I was finding it a real chore because I was on my knees and I was bending over and I was thinking, God, I wish the garden beds were higher. So I started building my own out of wood, and I built 3 big square ones. You know, my first major mistake with building a raised bed was I built them 2 by 2.4 meters, which is like, about 8 feet. 8 feet by 8 feet square.
Right.
Yeah, you know where I'm going with this. Yeah. And about 2 feet high. And I built the 3 of them, filled them full of soil, only to realize I couldn't reach the middle.
Yeah. Even for me, I actually have been preferring like 3 foot wide beds just so that I'd never have to walk around it. I could like generally force myself to reach 3 feet.
Yeah.
Once I get to 4, like I could do some stupid maneuvers to reach. But 3 keeps me honest. But 8, that would be a tricky one for sure.
Yeah. No, I could grow a lot in it, but how do you reach the middle? And for the first few years, I thought, look, I'll just put I think it was some wood, or it might have been a cement tile in the middle. And then I put a pot plant in there and I grew some stuff in the middle, but then that was ridiculous still. And I think it was about 6 years after I built those beds, I finally got around to cutting a keyhole in one side of them. And then I could access the bed. So I made them more like a U shape, you know. And then after that, of course, they rotted and fell apart. And so I upgraded. I'd already purchased some Birdie's garden beds, and I got them very early on because of the bending over thing. And I thought I'd trial these new corrugated alu zinc beds and see what they're like. And Simon Bird, who's the CEO, he at the time, he only just started up Birdie's garden beds.
Right.
He actually dropped them off to me at my place. So he drove all the way from the Gold Coast in his truck and dropped them off. And they were dropped off fully made, I think, at that time. Yeah. And all I had to do was, get them off the truck and put them into position. They're still going strong today, those beds.
How long ago was that?
Back in 2008.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're coming up on 20 years-ish. I mean, I remember you did a video where you dug out one of them, and I think it was like maybe it was 13 or something years when you dug that out. And that was the first time I've seen that. Obviously, the fact that those same beds have been there for that long and they're still going is impressive in its own right. And I don't actually know, in your climate, do you have a pretty wet area where you are in Australia? Or do you have like a dry and wet season, or is it constantly wet where you are? I have a very poor understanding of Australia.
Yeah, it's supposed to, well, I live in subtropics.
Okay. Well,
subtropical Queensland,
probably wet.
Southeast Queensland. And but we're supposed to have a bit of a dry spring. And typically not too much of a wet winter, but usually a wet summer. But now, this last 3 years or so, it's just been raining. Like every couple of weeks, it'll just downpour. It'll hammer down. My backyard is still pretty muddy, and it should be completely dry at the moment because we're coming out of winter into spring, but we're still getting a lot of rain through our winter. And by the looks of it, we're going to get plenty more rain in our spring, which is bad because if you get a lot of rain through spring, the ground is already saturated. When you get the heavy sort of monsoons, probably wrong word, but the heavy subtropical downpours, all it does is flood. And there's nowhere for the water to go.
There's nowhere for it to go.
Yeah. And the last major floods we've had here, 2011 and a couple of years back, they have been on the back of a wet spring. And yeah. And ironically, you've got inland Australia and parts of New South Wales, Victoria that are in drought. I mean, Australia's a big country. But,
right.
Yeah. And they say it's the land of, floods and droughts. So
I guess it's similar to California, because Northern California this year got like tons of, like, way more water than usual. I think like 150% of average. And then Southern California, where I am, got like 50% of average. So across like the whole state, all the water's in the north and all the people are in the south. So it's one of those interesting challenges. Today's episode of The Beat is sponsored by Storyblocks, which provides unlimited downloads of diverse, high-quality media for one predictable subscription fee. Whether it's monthly or annual, you get access to 4K video, regular video, pictures, music, sounds, templates, and more. And one of the things I really appreciate about Storyblocks is that it is an authentic stock media library created by real artists, which means that you get a wide-ranging diversity of different types of media uploaded. For example, if I wanted to make a video about growing carrots, I could talk about how I harvest carrots at home and then show you this video of how carrots are harvested at a farm using really cool big mechanized machinery. And that's footage I simply couldn't get otherwise, which is another thing I really appreciate about them, is that it is curated and fresh content. The stock library is frequently refreshed with commissioned content based on the latest trends and also what members are simply searching for, which means that if you couldn't find it in the past, you'll probably be able to find it in the future. And right now, listeners of The Beat can get an extra 2 months free when you sign up for an annual plan. All you have to do is go to storyblocks.com/thebeat to take advantage of this limited time offer. So now you're already wet, and that probably also is going to push some of your timing of what you plant out now that you are coming into spring. Do you, like, I guess since you're in the winter, do you focus pretty decently on like a fall garden, or do you mostly kind of fall winter, or do you mostly wait for the spring garden?
We grow most of our spring veggies and supermarket type veggies through our winter, because it's
okay. That makes sense.
Summer is too hot for, say, normal brassicas,
Gotcha.
Most veggies, even tomatoes. Unless you shade the tomatoes or have them in maybe a part shade or a dappled shade spot through the middle of summer, they've suffered terribly and they might not even grow. But getting back to the raised garden beds and in the wet, it really has helped though, because you get a better drainage in a raised garden bed. And even though it's boggy all around and it might be uncomfortable to walk around, get the gumboots on, you still have good veggies growing in the beds, and they're getting plenty of water and they're not getting waterlogged. So yeah, raised gardening for me is a no-brainer for my body and also for the climate and the weather conditions that we get, and just for ease of gardening overall. I mean, it might not be practical in a commercial sense, but for, because of the cost maybe of setting up all these raised garden beds, but it is viable in a private setting, or a home garden for sure.
So you've mostly gone raised bed at this point now, right?
Yeah. I raised bed, raised planters, big containers. I do like to grow in pots and containers as well, and I like to dabble in sort of maybe one day I might move to an apartment. So I want to get good at growing in pots and containers and all that. I mean, no time soon. But the other thing is, a lot of people that follow me don't have an acreage. So I like to show growing in containers and what you can do with growing in containers and experimenting with containers and how much you can grow in containers. But I'll typically bench them so that I might grow in half a dozen small pots, but they'll be on a bench so I can easily reach them and maintain them. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that probably helps your drainage too.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, for me, like, I similarly started all in ground because it was the cheapest possible way to do it. And over the years, I've been slowly adding more and more raised beds to my garden. There's something I really enjoy about growing in ground, even though it is harder physically. And in general, I find that my yields are always better in raised beds. That's just been something that I wish wasn't true, but seems to be true no matter what I try. I guess it's just a matter of like controlling the soil so well. But for me, like I also like to grow in a mixture of containers, pots, and also raised beds. And I find that it's something that I've seen in a lot of your videos, but the amount of yield that you could get out of a raised bed where you're controlling everything a lot more, like your soil, the fertility, the drainage, even the water, like you mentioned, pests are excluded in a lot of cases. The yields that you've gotten from the way that you plant in your raised beds has always been really impressive to me. And of course goes towards this idea that I know you talk about a lot, but that there isn't necessarily like hard and fast rules in the garden, right? Something that might say it needs like 18 inches of space, something in a raised bed, you could tend to get away with like tighter spacing, more plants. And like, for example, this video where all your onions in the raised bed, it's a phenomenal amount of onions that you could get inside that one space, or the potatoes that you could get out of that space. So I am with you on that one. It is easier on the body for sure. It's something I'm probably going to work more on in the future, is having those tall beds. And I agree that while it is more expensive in the beginning, if you are somewhere like a private space, or if you don't have that much land, like you mentioned, if you don't have an acreage, it even more so, I think, encourages you to go towards raised beds, because you can get away with such density in the planting and the layout. And I find the other thing that is kind of a not often spoken about advantage, but in my case, I have the raised beds up against the wall, and having it 30 inches off the ground means that the sun hits it for longer throughout the day, because it doesn't get shaded out by the wall throughout as I get closer and closer to the evening.
Of course.
So I've also found that benefit to be really great for those kind of marginal spots in my garden that seem to never get that much out, like production wise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're wonderful and just easier, like you said, on the body for sure.
Yeah. And what do you like about growing in ground?
I don't know. There's something, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's like actual dirt.
Yeah.
Like the sand and the clay, and something about it just, it almost kind of feels more primal. Like I don't have like a good reason for it, but something about it kind of like calls to me. I just enjoy working in the soil itself. The other thing that I find is that, for example, you might, depending on when you plant your tomatoes, you probably have a pretty good length of growing season, even though like in the middle of summer, they stall out. So I really like putting all of my indeterminate tomatoes directly in the soil, because that gives me like an extra couple feet of growth before I'd have to get on a ladder to basically get the harvest. So in some cases like that, I really like it. That's probably the only plant that I would say I prefer to go in ground. Oh, corn too. You're right. Yeah. Corn is another one, just because, again, it's tall. It doesn't necessarily need that soft soil. And I find that it's less likely to blow over in like my harder clay soil that's like much more anchored than it does in the raised bed. But potatoes way better in raised beds, even the squashes and melons for me, because I like to put them on the edge of the bed. Somehow they're able to get into that nice loose soil and grow like crazy distances, way better than anything I put in the ground.
And I guess in ground is just more accessible. Like this is how most people start. Yeah. If you don't have two coins to rub together, go and dig up some grass, turn that into a veggie patch. All it takes is time and effort, and then a $2.50 packet of seed, and you're away.
The return on investment is great there, for sure. And it is more work, but I did find it, at least when I first set up this garden, that is what I wanted. I wanted as much physical work as I could get to kind of distract me and keep me in there as long as possible. But now it's like, sometimes I wish I had more like raw space to dig into just to kind of have the physical work, but there's always something to do in the garden. I know you have like a pretty good space to work on. The other thing I was wondering is with fruit trees, because I know you grow a wide variety of them. Do you primarily grow them in ground, or do you kind of do a combination of things?
Yeah, it depends on the fruit tree, because we've got heavy clay soil, I've worked out that it's a waste of money to try to grow avocados directly into the ground. Custard apple, there's a Panama berry that my wife really loves that lasted 2 or 3 years before it succumbed to root rot because of the clay soil. So these types of trees, I've now been keeping them in the orchard, but I've been putting them in a raised garden bed and raising them up, and then so that taproot doesn't, in particular, doesn't hit that. Well, it might hit the clay soil, but it's not totally in it, and that's been effective. With the avocados, I've just had to try to get them away from the clay completely, because even if the small amount of taproot gets into that clay soil, they get that, it's not just root rot, but they get a disease that does affect the whole tree. It's like an anthracnose, but through the roots. I forget the name of it at the moment. But so I have been trialing raising them right up in like 2 meters or so, 6 feet of dirt and compost and everything, trying to mimic kind of a rainforest environment, giving them a bit of extra shade. And so far, I've got a couple that are growing pretty well, and we're getting some yields. Not great, but it's promising. But most of the rest of the fruit trees are just bunged straight into the soil. Exactly, all around. Mangoes, all types of nuts, macadamia, pecans. You've got guavas, all amount of citrus. We've got dozens of citrus trees, lots of different exotics.
Yeah, you've got a very interesting climate for fruit trees. And in general, I guess you could grow, most things, but maybe like stone fruit are hard. Is that right?
Well, yes, and certain, like the traditional stone fruits and apples, they need a chill factor, which we don't have here. And also olives need a bit of a chill factor. But because of the varieties that are coming out now over this last few decades, they're breeding them with a low chill factor, and so stone fruits they're very hardy, and you can cut them right back and they'll come back. You can plant them in clay soil and they will just thrive. But because the chill factor's down now, you can get fruit, and sometimes prolific fruit, from stone fruits on certain varieties. Sometimes not the best, but it's better than nothing. And also apples. You can get some really tasty apples now that have a low chill factor. So we're getting, for this type of climate, we're getting a more and more varieties that we can plant. So that's why I've got, just on 3 acres, I think about 140 plus different fruit trees.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you ever have a hard time actually keeping up with pruning? Do you let some of them get a little bit wild and you're like, oh, forget it, that one's just going to get tall? Or do you really try to stay on it? Oh, okay.
Nah, mate, they're all wild at the moment. And I'm running out of time. Running out of time. My aim was to do a huge trim, and I'm going to do a video on it. A huge prune. Like some of my mangoes now are like 7-8 meters tall. You can't, they'll fruit well, but I'm just feeding the animals. You can't, because the bats and the possums and all that are getting a great feed, and they're all, but we're not getting any, because you can't reach the fruit, you can't harvest them, you can't protect them, you can't bag them. And so what I've got to do is cut down most of the fruit trees on our property to about head height, and so that I can protect and net them if possible, if needed, and reach the fruits mainly, and monitor them and look after them and create enough space so that a big mango doesn't shade out a jabuticaba or another exotic tree that I'm trying to grow. And even some of the citrus now are getting shaded out by the bigger trees, like the star fruits and the star apples. Some of those Asian fruit trees, they can get really big. So I've got to cut them all back and reassess. And some of the olive trees, they might not fruit much, but they grow like crazy. in our climate because there's no dormant period for them. And
right.
And what's the use of having a big olive tree with no fruit on it?
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty nice sometimes, but usually those are the slow growing gnarled ones that look all interesting, right? It's hard to maintain such a big space and that many trees to even remember when to prune them and all that. I don't even have that many trees, but especially as, both of us are making videos for YouTube, we'll be like, oh, I could go prune those trees now, but I should make a video about it. So instead we just don't do it. And we just keep saying we'll make a video about it. And then the year goes by and then you're like, I'll do it next year. So that's I'm sure a classic struggle for you as well.
It is. It is. Timing is everything.
I am curious, from all that stuff that you're growing, do you have like a favorite? Like maybe we'll separate like a favorite fruit tree and a favorite like annual that you look forward to growing or harvesting every year.
First that comes to mind is our oranges. I love the oranges. Look, you know how much you have to spend? Like I was in Sydney a couple of weeks ago and you want to get a fresh orange juice, you're spending like $12 a glass. It's anything from, $6 to $12 a good glass. And it's just so that someone can squeeze it out for you nice and fresh. I mean, otherwise you're getting this reconstituted garbage full of sugar and that tastes awful. You can't drink it. I mean, I'm sure it's bad for you, but if you're at home and like we do, we get oranges because we stagger our oranges. We've got a Lane's Late Navel, you've got a Washington, we've got a Valencia. The Valencia ripens last. The Lane's Late ripens after the Washington. The Washington's first. And you've got that staggered oranges. We could have oranges for 6 to 8 months of the year here. And so you've got fresh oranges to eat or to juice and to use and cooking or whatever. So oranges have to be my favorite, I'd say. And then other citrus trees after that, like your limes and your lemons, because you can use them for so many things. And then as an annual, I would have to say cabbage for me. I mean, tomatoes is my favorite fruit to grow, not like in the veggie garden. But if you're talking about, a veggie, cabbage would be mine because you can just eat them in so many different ways and they're not that hard to grow. They grow really well. We've only got the window of winter into spring to grow cabbage here. But if you can get enough of it, which you always can, you can then preserve it through fermentation, sauerkraut, freeze it, freeze dry it. You could do lots of things with it. And it's just good to eat in so many different ways. And it's really good for you too.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I also love the cabbage out of the garden in particular. I don't know how actually cold it gets where you are. Like where I am, we'll get maybe a handful of nights that dip into like the low 30s. Like I will get frost on the soil barely, maybe 2 nights or like 2 mornings out of the year, and that's it. But even that little cold period is just enough that cabbage gets a little bit sweeter, and definitely sweeter than anything I've ever had at the grocery store. The first time we had that cabbage from the garden, it was a bit of a revelation because you're like, whoa, this is cabbage. Like it has a little bit of natural sweetness. It caramelizes when you cook it. It's delicious, fresh. I made fermented cabbage with some of the cabbages that I grew, and it is really good. And you're right. It's not like a difficult thing to grow. Like sometimes with broccoli or cauliflower, it can be frustrating when the head gets ruined based on any number of factors, or it bolts a little bit early. But cabbage is a pretty reliable one. That's a very interesting pick.
Yeah, it is.
I think
it is reliable. Yeah.
Yeah. And the citrus, I'm right there with you. I think it's hard to think of anything more versatile than a lemon and a lime tree. Like between those two, like you could do so many different things. And I will also say that not at all related, but the Valencia has and always will be, I think, my favorite orange. Something about the thin skin, the juice, it's just such a good orange. And I love how long it can hang on the tree as well.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
not many people know that about the hanging on the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not many people know
That's
that at all.
that's one of these oranges that I read about and I found very fascinating because they said that basically it'll turn orange, and if you leave it on the tree, it'll turn green again, and it's actually still
what?
sweet. Yeah, it'll revert back to green, and it'll be even, I think, sweeter at that point. So they could hang for a long time.
Well,
I've read a
Jacques,
little bit
I tell
about
you,
that.
that is something that I didn't know, and I've been growing
Yeah.
Valencias for nearly 20 years. And
Okay,
you've just led me into another experiment. Thank you very much.
there you go. Yes,
I've
of
always-
course. I'm actually looking forward to that experiment.
Yeah, I've always picked them like really late, sometimes right into our summer, but we've just always harvested them and used them. But I've never let them that long to maybe start to get a tinge back of green.
Yeah, isn't that weird that they kind of go the reverse again? I don't know why it is that they do that, but as far as I've read and seen, I think it's the Valencia is the only one that I've seen that's described as doing that.
Right,
And so it's a great advantage because then you could also just let it hang for a longer time. And I've seen some Valencia trees that have them go green again, and they are very sweet, and they are still absolutely delicious. So I'm very curious to see you do that experiment and do a taste maybe comparison, or maybe you could freeze the juice of one and then like somehow compare it. But that would be a fun one. I definitely am looking forward to that.
The reason people do like the juice of the Valencia is because it's a little more tart. A sweet orange juice can get a bit sickly.
Yeah, that's a fair
sweet.
point.
Yeah.
It's like a little boring too. And then I'm also curious on the flip side, is there a fruit and or a vegetable that you either don't like to grow, but you grow for some reason, or B, something that you always struggle with every year, but you always keep trying anyway?
Well, yeah, we've already mentioned the avocado.
Oh, right.
Oh, and the olive. So,
yeah.
And I've recently bought 3 more olive trees too, just to add to the pain of my suffering. But these are supposed to be a lower chill variety.
Okay.
So the label tells me that it's supposed to be better suited for warmer climates. So let's hope. I mean, you think, well, isn't the Mediterranean warm? Yeah, it is. It gets blooming hot there. But it does get cold too. So it has that chill factor, and that's what triggers the olives to flower and fruit. Whereas here, if we have a mild winter, you're not going to get one flower on your tree, so they just keep on growing with not flowering. So that's annoying. And then I've always wanted to master an avocado because, like, in my region, if you don't have clay soil, you have an avocado farm, and the avocados are prolific. But because my property has blooming clay soil, I can't grow them, and it's eating me up. So I've got to find a way to get my avocados going well, and I'll be a happy man at the end of my gardening life.
I'll tell you that if there is another similarity we have in San Diego, one of our freeways is called the Avocado Highway because it is where we grow. We used to historically grow, I think, almost all the avocados basically down here, and not so much anymore, but they plant them on the hillsides so that they can have the drainage because they don't like wet feet, as you mentioned. And you could still see tons of avocados on the hillsides if you drive down the 15 freeway north. But one of the things that Kevin and so at Kevin's house, we planted an avocado either 3 or 4 times. I can't remember now, but the first one just died. The second one was planted right on the center of where the pond is that we built. So we had to move it. And then when we moved it, it died. And then I remember those 2 for sure. And then I did a little research, and what I found was that a method of planting the avocados that seemed to work for somebody else in San Diego, similar issues where you get a little bit of clay on the surface and the plant just basically dies, is that what he recommended, and that's what we did, and the trees actually still look really good, is that when you get like an avocado in a pot, you put it on the surface of your soil, you cut off the pot entirely, and you just leave the entire root ball on the surface, and then you mound around it. And so by doing that, you're not putting the actual root ball into the soil directly. You're just setting it on top, and then you mound it with like better draining soils around it, all the way around. You build a mound up to the top level. And so far, those 2 avocados that we planted like that have not died. Everything else that we've done has died.
That's a good tip right there.
Yeah. So maybe try that one too if you're still, if the crazy deep pot method doesn't work. And that, it hasn't produced yet, but they have not died.
Yeah.
They've been like that for 2 years, and they seem to be growing quite nicely now. So maybe in the next year we'll get some fruit off of it. Yeah. But yeah, it's a similar thing. It's interesting how, regardless, I feel like, of who I talk to or what region they're in, there's like something similar across the growing zones or the techniques that people run into. And it's always a really fun thing to kind of unpack those challenges together and learn from each other that way.
Oh, you get people that'll ask, they'll email me and they'll say, like even my book, they'll say, is your, I mean, why should I follow your instructions? Like, can you grow this? Because I live in this part of the world and you're in Australia, our climate's similar in that. And I tell people not to worry about that, because I follow personally people from all over the world, and you can, exactly what you've just said, you can find these nuggets and tips more than you'd expect that can help you in your own garden. Even if you're talking to someone in Canada, for me, I live in the subtropics. I might be talking to someone in Alberta, Canada, which has a very cold climate, and I can still learn a lot from them. So I would encourage people not to necessarily just follow people in your own location, which is interesting and good to know what people are growing and planting. But get outside that box a bit and start talking and following people growing in other locations as well, because you never know what ideas might come up that could help you think outside the box. Now, one of those things is growing large tomatoes through our winter time. What gave me the idea was following guys, it was in the States, talking about tomatoes, the greening problem when they don't ripen. And we've never had that problem here. But the way you can push those tomatoes into winter and get them to ripen is something that made me think, well, I've got a problem with pests, a Queensland fruit fly here that loves stinging our big tomatoes, but they go dormant in winter. But it's not a very good time to grow tomatoes through the middle of our winter. But if I could sort of put them in a warm spot, baby them a bit, accept a bit of leaf damage through disease, if I could get them to grow, it would mitigate that pest problem, and I would have tomatoes through our winter time, where no way I could grow them through the spring, summer when tomatoes, well, at least our spring when tomatoes grow best, because you could grow the small ones, the cherries, because they're fairly acidic and the fruit fly doesn't sting them and doesn't lay the maggot inside. But you can't grow the big ones because they're not acidic enough, and the fruit fly stings them and they just get full of maggots. And you can imagine trying to, unless you just grew one plant and netted just that one plant and then pollinated by hand or shook them and that to get them pollinated, it's too time consuming. But anyway, yeah, I've been growing them for several seasons now through winter, the larger varieties, and it works. They suffer a bit, and I'm accepting that they're suffering, but we're getting some beautiful big beefsteak tomatoes without the need to net them or try to, commercially they spray them, with terrible pesticides that are systemic, that get right into the juices of the tomato. You don't want to be eating that, but they do.
Yeah, that's a good point. If it's killing the maggots, it's in there.
Yeah. Well, they're so potent, mate, that they kill the fruit fly as it stings the fruit.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it doesn't even get a chance to lay the maggot in.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
So Yeah, there is a good reason right there alone to grow your own tomatoes at least. But
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you say that you're getting them in the winter, are you growing them through the winter and then they start fruiting like at the early spring, or are you actually harvesting in the winter?
Harvesting in winter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting
And
because
so-
I thought that the
Yeah.
amount of sunlight would be your biggest factor that stopped
It
you there.
is. It
Okay.
is. Yeah, and it's not great, but they are ripening. The
Yeah.
plants do suffer, so you're not going to get as big a yield as you would say through
see.
spring. You typically start them now and let your plants mature into spring, and before the big heat of summer hits, you've got a good harvest of tomatoes. We can do that with cherries, but you can't do it with the big ones. So that's what I mean by learning from someone else or getting ideas from somewhere else and then applying that to your own garden.
I think that's absolutely just has to be true, because if we think about it, like clay soil doesn't exist in one place. It exists all over the world. Heat waves exist all over the world. Rainy days can exist all over the world, like wet, dry, all these problems, they might be more concentrated in certain regions, but we kind of tend to all run into similar issues at different points in our gardening journey. And if we don't know how people who deal with it every day deal with it, then we're doing ourselves a disservice of not sort of benefiting from their experience there. Just like at some point, if I ever leave San Diego, I'm going to have to figure out how to actually plant on a normal schedule where you don't just have the whole year. And I'll have to figure out what to do when it rains, because, you know, for me, it only rains from like December through maybe April. And then the rest of the year is bone dry. So I have like developed different level of skills to kind of deal with that. But drop me somewhere else, I'm going to have to figure out all those problems again. But I still benefit from knowing what I know already about how to bring water to my plants and things like that. So there's always going to be that benefit there. Absolutely.
How do you account for that really dry period or time of the year?
It's the whole entire garden is 100% on drip irrigation. Every single thing that I plant has a drip line next to it. If it doesn't, it's dead. Even hand watering is too difficult, because then I end up, you know, a lot of water goes into pathways and I lose the water efficiency. And then of course, once your garden gets to a certain size, like imagine hand watering your garden, it would be a nightmare. It would be fun maybe the first time, but then if you do it every other day, you're like, I don't have time to do anything but water my garden. So for us, it's, you just have to have irrigation everywhere. If you don't, just don't plan on succeeding in that area. Everywhere where I thought I could just do it by hand and deal with it always suffers. And then as soon as I put irrigation in that area, it's like, wow, everything looks so good now that it has consistent water. Who would have thought?
Consistent regular water does
and that's
help
the problem.
a lot. What about olives? You know, those oyas, those types of things.
Yeah, I do have oyas. So where I've tended to use those kinds of watering items, like the oyas, which are like clay vessels you bury that passively sort of weep into the soil around them. I use those in some of the raised beds that I have like on my patio, where I just didn't bother putting irrigation because it's all brick and I don't want to mess with like irrigation running on the surface. So I filled those beds. I have like a 2x8 herb bed, and I have like 4 oyas in them, or 5 oyas in that. And I just top those off every couple days, and that helps a lot. And that's a great way to deal with it as well. It gives you more buffer, but it's not going to be as good of coverage as like, you know, actual irrigation and things like that. But anything that's planted around it will do just great. It'll be able to access that water just fine. You did mention that you had a book, I think. You said that when people were asking you if they get value from it. I'm guessing here where I am in San Diego, it's not out yet, but maybe where you are, do you already have a copy?
You can get it in the States.
Yes.
Here it is here.
Oh, nice. Love it. So 100 top crops you can grow.
100 top crops you can grow. So it's my top 100, but to be honest, it's my top 80, because 20 of them, the last 20 crops that I grew so you don't have to. So they're
nice.
they're crops that I just wouldn't recommend growing, and there are some controversial picks, but it's my opinion.
Yes.
But I can give you one of them that I know.
Yeah, I would love a controversial, and then one that you stand by.
Your US audience will hate me for this, but number 5 in the ones that I wouldn't grow again is okra.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious why. Is it because you
Why?
hate it?
It starts with why. Initially, I had high hopes for okra because I know many of my supporters and friends in the US love it. Problem is, I can't get over the unpleasant texture in the mouth, and the pods ooze a slimy substance that
Yeah.
I don't like. That's it. It grows
That's fair.
really well here.
Yeah, I would imagine it does really well for you down there. It likes the heat and humidity. So that's interesting. I will say, I'm sure many people have told you this, but cutting it into like slivers like this and then frying it, very
Yep.
delicious. And the slime is entirely gone at that point, but
Is
it's
it?
still there. Yeah,
Yeah.
like if you do a little corn batter and you do like little coins and fry that,
Yeah.
it's quite good.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work to get that in the end. If that's the only way you're going to eat it, I can understand.
I mean,
The
it's
bottom.
like Vegemite, isn't it? Like a lot of you
Yeah.
guys don't like Vegemite. We grew up with it, and so we like slather it all over our toast and love it. So if you've grown up with okra, and you're going to probably like it. Even though another one that I did grow up with because my mother forced me was Brussels sprouts, and I don't grow that either anymore because I don't like the taste of it. They're too bitter for me. And secondly, in our subtropical climate, the growing season, it's just too long, and I can't get it to grow. By the time summer hits, it's still trying to bud, and then the pests just smash it.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Even
there's
here,
that.
it's like a 50-50 chance, like that I'm not going to get a single Brussels sprout back to the kitchen, because if it gets a little bit too warm in the spring, it's toast. Like the aphids just immediately find it and they latch on and they never give up. So I get that one. And I've actually met people who also, no matter how I prepare it, they just don't like it. It's just a little bit too bitter. There's some flavor in there that they can't get over. And I get it. That makes sense to me. I'm trying to think of even if I had something like that. And the only one I could think of is kohlrabi, just because I think it's boring. It's like, it's a fun looking plant, but I've always had a hard time like getting excited to eat kohlrabi. And then a random plant, one that's just like nobody's ever going to grow it anyway because it's such a specialty, was the leech tea tomato. And it's like this weird solanaceous plant that makes these like little red fruits. It's like Litchi.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. Litchi, I believe is how you spelled it. Tomato. Yeah. And the craziest thing about this plant that maybe we'll have some fun if you do grow it is that there are spikes that erupt out of every single part of it. Like the leaves have spikes, like that erupt out of the leaves. The fruit has little spikes around it. It's like no pest is probably getting to it. It's absolutely covered in thorns in every single aspect. And then you get these little reddish tomato looking things, and they have like this very mild flavor. My understanding is that you basically just cook with it. And I grew it just because I thought it would be fun. And it described it as like a fruit that you could make pies with or something like that. But by the time it grew and by the time I harvested all those spikes and like the crazy leaves and stuff, nobody was interested in eating it anyway. So that would be the one that I would say. It's so random that nobody's probably even thinking of growing it, but I would not grow that one again personally.
At least you've tested it and tried it, because you never know.
Yeah, maybe
you never
it
know.
could be amazing.
Yeah, exactly. There are some crops that I've, like, you asked me before, what's something that's changed my mind, but it's a real bugger to grow, and that's in here too. But it's African horned cucumber. Have you tried them?
I have tried I think like one of the common names is like Kiwano melon.
Yeah, Kiwano.
Yeah, and they look crazy. I tried one. I was like, for me, it didn't grow on me. It was like too jelly, a lot of seed.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. Somebody else in the household liked it for sure.
And you'll pay like $9 US for one in the store. They're ridiculously expensive. Well, here, my first time growing them was by mistake, because a bird must have dropped a seed, and it came up and took over an apple tree. And I thought, what is this? And I left it go and go and go, and it grows forever, which is why I don't like growing it. A reason why I didn't like growing it, because it grows forever before it starts to flower and then fruit. Yeah, it takes months and months. It'll go all summer and start to flower, and then the fruit will ripen right at the blooming end of our winter.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it goes forever. And it takes up a
guessed
lot
that'd be
of
a
space.
fast one. Wow.
It's massive.
Good to know.
It'll take up 5 or 6 meters of trellising if you let it. And then you'll get
crazy.
maybe 20 or 30 fruit off it. And you've got to be careful handling it. They're very, very spiny. But you can eat them green or totally ripe. When you let them really ripen up, they're quite nice. They're like this. I did a video just a few days ago, actually, describing it as a mix of banana, sort of passion fruit, and cucumber, or pineapple kind of mixture. Not as strong, but it's still very pleasant. The green ones, we use them in salsas. They're very effective when you mix them with chopped tomato and capsicum and you use the green pulp. Yes, there's a lot of seeds, but it's like a passion fruit. The seeds just glide down. They're not prohibitive when you're eating them. But the problem really is finding the space and leaving that long growing season and putting up with the spikiness and the difficulty of them and the ugliness of them type of thing. But yeah, it's won me over. It's something that I do like to grow every year. Yeah.
It looks like fun too. It is like a fun thing to show people. And sometimes I do like the novelty experience of like showing somebody who comes over something that they've never seen and having them eat it. And they're like, I could do that? Like, are you sure I could eat this? I've never heard of this. It's always been kind of a fun thing. The passion fruit is actually one that I'll say I am contemplating getting rid of because it just takes up so much space. So much space. It's such a greedy plant. But we're probably going to get like 100 of them this year. And it's prolific, but man, is it a greedy plant. It just wants to take over your whole garden if you let it.
Passion fruits, though, in the supermarket, you're paying at least $1 each for them, maybe more now. So you're getting 100 and you're really almost, upset about the plant. But it's pretty good harvest.
It is.
Yeah.
And it also requires no work for me whatsoever. No. It barely even needs water. That's like the thing that keeps me from getting rid of it every year. I'm like, what am I going to put here otherwise? It'll probably be way more work than this. And I probably won't get as much of a harvest. So yeah, there's always trade-offs in the garden. That's for sure. It's something that all of us either accept at some point or continue to fight forever. And it's a losing battle. Sometimes you just have to take a trade-off.
It's always changing, isn't it?
Yes.
It's always
That's
changing.
actually what I find enjoying.
Yeah.
At first I could see it being maybe a little bit stressful or upsetting to somebody that things are hard to keep consistent. But for me, like that's one of the things that really keeps me engaged in the garden for such a long period of time is that every year presents a little bit different of a challenge. Every summer is a little bit different. The pests are a little different. And while they can be frustrating, it gives us an opportunity to learn. And for me, like opportunity to learn is what keeps me alive. So,
and everyone likes a challenge, don't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
You should. You should like a challenge and accept a challenge. Keeps us all going. And gardening always throws up challenges. And
always.
When you master those and you get over them, it's very satisfying.
100%. Yeah. Well, this has been a very satisfying conversation with you, Mark. It's been fun talking about our differences, what's similar, the battles that we fought in the garden. And I think we both came away learning and knowing something a little bit new. So that's always a great thing for me as well. Very excited to get a copy of your book.
Sorry, mate, that
really
I couldn't get it to you.
It's hard to get things over the sea there.
Yeah.
From Australia to San Diego. It's quite a jog, but I love all your content. I look forward to looking through your book. I'm sure it's going to be both an educational and fun read, and also just to see your perspective on things. Like you mentioned, like there's the okra section. I'm curious to see your take on these different sort of crops that you've tried and maybe walked away from in the past. So thank you for coming on today and chatting with me and finding the time. Pleasure meeting you and talking with you today. And I look forward to all the content in the future. Thanks, Mark.
Mate. Thanks, mate. I appreciate the invite on, and it's fantastic to meet you. I can't wait to meet you in person one day, hopefully soon.
That'd be great.
Come over to the States and shake your hand. Thank you very much.
If you do, absolutely welcome, and I'll cook you a meal while you're here too.
Oh, cool.
All right, see you, Mark.
Okay, see you, mate. Thank you.